every week matters.
One of the big questions for the committee is the one-loss team.
It's going to be one big funnel to the four.
In college football, the goal isn't just to have a number next to your name. You do everything you can to shrink that digit to as small as it can be.
Stetson Bennett keeping the play alive.
The tinier that number becomes, so does the distance between a team and its gridiron glory.
I'm in love with the sweet, sweet, sweet sunshine.
Every play, every yard, every victory matters.
And it's time for me to take what's mine. Yeah, yeah.
He got it. The misery is over on Rocky Top.
It's time.
It is addition with the ultimate goal of subtraction. From 25 to 1.
I'm in love with that sweet, sweet, sweet sunshine.
Jalen Tuimoloau. Wow.
Welcome to the latest solution in college football's total sum game. Welcome to the Top 25 rankings.
It's time.
We are back! That's right, another year of Tuesdays being glorious, fun, full of Cheez-Its and ranking reactions. Christine Williamson, AJ McCarron, I'm Jason Fitz. This is Ranking Reaction presented by Cheez-It, and we're going to be here every single Tuesday. After you watch the rankings come out and you see all the pros break it down, we're going to break it down with the level of swagger only this show can present.
We are also pros.
No, we're just doing it differently. We get to eat Cheez-Its while we do it and kick our feet up and have heated debate because every year is different. The committee has spoken. We'll get to all of the rankings. We'll catch you up on it. But first, we have to welcome AJ. It's the first time. Christine's done this show for 4 years. I've done this show for 6 years. AJ, this is the first time on the show. So have some Cheez-Its and sit back and enjoy.
Congratulations.
All right.
Yeah.
Your level of excitement so far is?
So good.
That's
I feel like I don't know what level that is. Is that a 10? Is that a 10?
That's an AJ 10, right?
Yeah.
That's an
That's
AJ.
why I didn't know.
AJ, show us an AJ 3 and a level of excitement. It looks about the same. I'm just like, AJ's Darth Vader. You know, the 3 to the 10 isn't that different. We're going to sit here. We're going to munch on Cheez-Its. We're going to have all the snacks that you could possibly want. We're going to break out a Cheez-It chain coming up. We are going to give you all sorts of guests. Heather Dinich's going to join us, so we'll get the expertise from the room. But we have to start everything with the obvious. We got the top 6, and we can now see what they are. As you look across the landscape, you've probably already seen this, but we're going to show it to you again. At number 6, Alabama at 7-1. At number 5, Michigan, to the surprise of this room. We'll get to that in a second. At number 4, Clemson at 8-0. Some also surprised by that. Number 3, Georgia coming in, which means at number 2, we get Ohio State. And for the first time ever, the number 1 team, according to the College Football Playoff Committee, is the Tennessee Volunteers, setting up a Saturday matchup between number 1 Tennessee and number 3 Georgia that will answer a lot of these seeding conversations. But before we break it all down, thoughts at Tennessee at number 1, Christine?
Yes, that makes complete and utter sense. I feel like eye test and resume, those are the 2 things that we always talk about the committee looking at, which one they care about more. And I feel like Tennessee passes both of those tests, so it makes sense that they're at number 1.
AJ?
I mean, I don't hate it, but I'm not in agreement with it.
Who would you put at number 1?
I would leave Georgia there. Georgia was number 1 last week. They haven't been beaten. If you're the number 1 team in the country and you've been there for most of the year, until somebody knocks you off, I don't see why you get jumped.
But they haven't been number 1 because this is the first rankings.
Yeah, see, the playoff rankings aren't supposed to take into account the AP poll or the coaches poll.
Listen, we can't go by one set of rules halfway during the year and then change all of a sudden. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, we actually could because the rest of the rules don't matter. The CFP actually decides.
100%. And this is like the first ever ranking. So if this is the first ever rankings, if we started ranking the college football season right now, forget about the AP poll, you wouldn't have Tennessee at number 1.
No, I wouldn't.
You would have Georgia at number 1.
I would.
Based off of?
The way they've played. They've had one letdown week against Missouri. At Missouri, I've played there before. It's a tough place to play for whatever reason. So me personally, I would keep Georgia.
I think what gets interesting is I think we've learned that there's one thing the committee definitely values right away. And every year the committee changes. For anyone that doesn't know, every 3 years, they rotate different people in and out. There's some different
Mm-hmm.
committee members this year, a different committee chairperson this year. What I think we learned is that they value big wins because you can make the argument that Georgia has a big win over Oregon. Outside of that game, if you eliminate that game from their schedule, the rest of their opponents are combined 22 and 26, and only one of them has a winning record. That's South Carolina, right? If you look at Tennessee, they're coming off of a win that, frankly, looked good against Kentucky. Where their defense played better. I'm not saying Kentucky's great, but Tennessee also has
horrible.
Well, I mean,
now.
horrible is a bit of a statement. But Tennessee is they have the best win in the country. I mean, the win over Alabama would be the most significant win anybody has this year,
Who
right?
has Georgia beaten so far this season?
Oregon.
Yeah,
That's
Oregon.
really it.
Everybody else sucks.
Right. I mean, who has Tennessee really played?
Well,
though?
Kentucky's better than the teams. Kentucky's better than Missouri, right?
Right now, I don't know.
Oh.
Tennessee.
Kentucky, there's no way you can watch that Kentucky versus Tennessee game. And Tennessee's secondary is just as bad as Alabama's. And Alabama's secondary this year is bad. Okay? So, and Kentucky couldn't move the ball versus Tennessee one bit. Not a chance. So, no, if Kentucky played Missouri right now, that is an honest answer. I don't know who would win.
Well, the committee told us Tennessee's number 1. They also told us Ohio State is number 2. So what do we think of this? I mean, Ohio State obviously coming in ahead of Georgia still in the rankings, but Ohio State coming off of a big win against, you can see the key wins there, Notre Dame, who's terrible,
Oh, okay.
Wisconsin,
Okay.
Michigan State, and Penn State. So, you know.
I think the interesting thing about Ohio State being at number 2 and Michigan, I know we're not talking about them, also being where they're ranked, is the fact that they both have a win over Penn State and Michigan isn't in the top 4. However, Ohio, it's just weighing different opponents, right, at this point. It is, I think, mostly when it comes to AJ's points, there has to be an eye test comparison because of the fact that you can't go off of only resume, especially when people have common opponents, and it's interesting to see how the committee is weighing those things.
Strength of resume, though, by the way, or strength of record, as we call it, would have Tennessee number 1 right now, according to ESPN's metrics, and Ohio State number 2.
Right.
So
exactly.
Nobody even knows what that means.
It's
how strong your record is, how
it's
good
an
the opponents that
algorithm
you're playing
that is
Right.
built to see how the average top 25 team
Yeah, and we're going
would do.
off a computer that's creating an algorithm that
But that computer's matched 1 through 4 every time.
that has nothing to do with playing on the field. You still have to play.
That's why it's eye test versus resume.
Yeah, Ohio State, I'm fine, but Ohio State should be at number 3. Tennessee should be at 2.
And Georgia, who we have at number 3, AJ would have at number 1. Georgia comes in at number 3. Their strength of record, by the way, is 5th right now. Game control is 4th. Again, these are just metrics that we speak of. And I have no problem. Georgia's defense is statistically better in almost every major category this year than it was last year. I think that has to be, part of the conversation is that they reloaded the cupboard very quickly. The one thing that Georgia hasn't done particularly well is sack the quarterback. So we'll see what that means for Saturday's matchup. But so far, their defenses look great.
That's what I was about to say. I feel like, we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, exit a little lore, but these teams are playing each other this weekend.
Right.
So we'll definitely see who deserves to be in the top 4, at least after Saturday, I feel like.
I mean, you agree?
Listen, I personally think Georgia should be number 1, but
What if Georgia loses to Tennessee in a close game on Saturday? Where should they be ranked?
I would still put them in the top 5. I think they're easily one of the 5th best teams in the country.
All right, so now we get to the team that caused a little bit of controversy in this, not controversy, but caused a collective, from this Clemson in at number 4.
Go Tigers! AJ, you don't know this about me, but I went to grad school at Clemson.
Wait.
The only reason I was saying it like that is because as I was saying it, I already know that especially people in the control room are like, here Christian goes. I did go to grad school at Clemson. So I was going to try to figure out a reason that Clemson should be at number 4. I couldn't.
Yeah. Look, there's no way you can. If she did that, she was going to be lying to your face, America.
We love to see
The amazing thing is that she went to undergrad at Miami, which creates
We don't
this
talk about that
conflict.
right now.
Yeah, like if Miami's doing great, Miami's a headline.
Well,
But
they had a hell of a win this past weekend.
I mean, so, but Clemson, and you and I have talked about this a lot on the College Football Show. By the way, you should check out the College Football Show Saturdays. You should check out Countdown to Game Day Saturday mornings. We've talked a lot about Clemson's offense and the fact that not much has looked easy. DJ Uiagalelei hasn't taken some massive step forward.
He took a baby step forward, and then he took a little bit of a step back.
A lot of a step back.
He took a step back to the point that a quarterback came in with 2 for
Yeah.
better.
That we were like, that can't throw it a lick in Cade Klubnik. Okay,
Cade came through and
that's
did
not
what he had to
knocking
do.
Cade, but
Okay.
Cade couldn't throw it. Listen, Clemson's offense is horrific. They are atrocious on offense. They can't throw the ball. You can't say Clemson could beat any of those teams in the top 3. I truly believe that. They don't throw the ball well enough. You have to be able to throw the ball to beat all 3 of those teams and teams behind them that we'll get to in the rankings. So, and the ACC is the 4th best conference in all of college football this year.
He's hot on this. ACC is the 4th best conference.
So I do agree with that, and I feel like we've agreed with that every single year. We've always talked about the fact that the ACC may be the weakest Power 5 conference. Going into the season, when we had teams like Syracuse, Wake Forest, NC State playing really well, it was like, how do we weigh the ACC? And I think especially when the CFP rankings come out, we see how the committee thinks about each conference and when it comes to Pac-12, Big 12, et cetera. So we see what they think about the ACC. I feel like this is what the problem is. Clemson has always been literally the only team that we've had ranked, right? They've always been the #1 team in the ACC, but also they've killed every ACC team. They've always been the team that everybody's looked at. So I think the issue is the fact that Clemson historically has been that team, right? It is the only reason that you can justify the ACC actually being what they have been or what they are this season. So I think it's a little bit of history plus expectation mixed in there.
You're not wrong. And how much different would all of this conversation be if Wake Forest had decided not to turn the ball over 5 times in just the third quarter of a football game? Before we move on, I want to give you a quick nugget about the #1 team in general in history. So far, if you take the entire history of the college football playoff, every year except for one, the very first year, every other year of the college football playoff, the team that's initially ranked #1 has made the college football playoff. We'll later on debate whether or not that's going to happen with Tennessee because we don't agree on that.
I think so.
We'll move to number 5 in all the land. And number 5 in all the land is Michigan. And Michigan, at this point, by the way, this is another interesting nugget. Entering this season, 16 undefeated Power 5 teams have been ranked outside of the top 4 in the first CFP ranking. Of those 16, only 3 have ended up making the playoffs. So the history shows if you're undefeated and outside the top 4, you're done. But Michigan sits here. Michigan has a chance, though, guys, Michigan controls their own destiny. And let's not get it twisted. All they got to do is beat Ohio State, which I laugh inside as I say.
I mean, listen, their best wins versus Penn State. And what's Penn State's weakness is run defense. Penn State's has 2 pretty good cornerbacks. So from a passing standpoint, from a on defense, that's their strength, right? So when I look at that's why it's hard for me to compare because Ohio State, what can they not do? Can't run the ball. What do they do well? Throw it. All right. So their matchup versus Penn State was tougher. What does Michigan do really well? Run the football. What do they not do well? Throw it. So. I'm not high on Michigan. I don't think Michigan's very good, but they control their own destiny if they beat Ohio State.
I do want to say something really fast. I think the thing that's most interesting about Michigan and Ohio State is because they have to beat one another. One of the teams has to beat one another. That's a really good win on their resume, right? So that's the reason that one of those teams coming out of the Big Ten has a good path into getting to the CFP because they will have a top 5 win.
And I would apply the same standard to them that we talk about often with the SEC. If we get an all-time game that comes down to the last field goal, and all of a sudden gets pushed in, the loser of that game is going to want to make an argument for why they still belong. One other team in the top 6 we obviously got to hit, that's Bama. Alabama comes in at number 6, ahead of undefeated TCU, which has some people up in arms. I struggle with this one, guys, because this is what I say every year when we get to this. If I had to bet my house on Alabama versus Clemson, for example, I would bet my house on Alabama. The problem is...
Why would you do that?
Bet my house, bet your house, bet my neighbor's house.
I'm not betting
the problem is
anybody's
wins and losses have to mean something, and Alabama has a loss.
Yeah, exactly. I
don't know how to
And the other thing,
navigate.
too, is there's a whole rest of the college football season left. So Bama has a chance to have 2 losses, which we say are in our commandments is a 2-loss team does not make it into the CFP. So I feel like they're basically giving Alabama a chance to not mess up for the rest of the season.
Well, I mean, if Bama wins, they're in. It doesn't matter. If they win out, they're in. Everybody can say what they want.
We disagree with that on this show.
It's not gonna change.
I think there's a lot of variables to that, man, and it depends on how they win and who they beat. Like if Alabama goes in and wins the SEC championship game over Georgia, who wins a close game to Tennessee, you'll have 3 teams with 1 loss, and head-to-head's supposed to matter to the committee. So how does the head-to-head figure that out? How do they let in
easily?
Alabama?
They take who the SEC champion is.
Yeah, but that's just one mark. According to the committee metrics, that winning a conference championship is nothing more than the opportunity to get an additional significant win.
Fitz, you can argue all you want. If Alabama won the SEC and they didn't get in, college football would be done. They'd leave the NCAA. There wouldn't be any more NCAA. They'd break off in their own division. Let's be real.
Even if it was a really close game?
Do what?
Even if the SEC championship was a really close game?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If they win, they are in. It's 1,000%.
Let's get a little expertise on this from our friend, a friend of the show, and nobody knows the College Football Playoff Committee better than Heather Dinich. I want to ask you about the committee, but before we even go there, you've heard the debate we're having here, Heather. So this is the imaginary scenario, and I know how much you love this. Right now, we have Tennessee. All right, Tennessee gets beat by Georgia in an all-time classic. I can't believe that just happened game that keeps them out of the SEC championship game. At which point, Alabama beats Georgia in an all-time classic. Oh my God, what just happened? In this situation, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee all have 1 loss. Could Alabama be left out of the college football?
Just so you know, you're teeing it up to try to turn Heather on me.
No.
Heather's my girl.
Heather is a very unbiased
Heather's
person.
been on College Game Day Radio the past 2 weeks with us. And me and her are on the same wavelength over here. So.
Look, no, Heather, come in. Mommy and Daddy are fighting, Heather. Fix this. How does it work out when that happens?
I'm going to have to put you guys in corners. So are you asking me, did I hear you correctly that you said Alabama wins the SEC and gets left out?
Why not? Why not?
Okay, wait. Why not?
Thank you.
Here's my question, though.
I don't think this is working.
Let's just say.
What about head-to-head?
Let's just say Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia each have 1 loss. Alabama wins the SEC championship. Will we get 3 SEC teams in the CFP, possibly?
That is the best case to see it because Tennessee would be able to say they have a win against the SEC champs. What we saw today, guys, leads me to believe that Georgia has to beat Tennessee on Saturday. They're in the jinx spot, first of all. Unlucky number 3. There's only 1 team in the history of the college football playoff that has been ranked number 3 in this ranking and has made it to the playoff. That was Clemson in 2020, and everybody knows 2020 was a wacky year. We're not even going to count it. So can Georgia break the jinx? The only way, to me, is for them to beat Tennessee and win the East because then they can get in whether or not they beat Alabama. We've seen that movie before with the SEC championship game.
Okay, so now that you've broken up our argument, let me ask you about this committee because every year there's cycling of new members. We also have a new committee chair. What did you learn about this committee and what they value from this ranking?
Well, I learned that they are at least consistent with how important those non-conference schedules are because they put Michigan under the microscope. And I think that's a big reason why the Wolverines are on the bubble because you look at that non-conference schedule and committee chair Boo Corrigan, NC State's athletic director, said this just a minute ago on the teleconference. You're looking at Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn, and those teams have combined for an 8-18 record. That's not very good. That's not very good at all. And that's one of the reasons they are where they are. And I think that there are wild inconsistencies from year to year with each committee, with each ranking, but the one thing they have been consistent about is just how important those non-conference schedules are. There's no win against a Power 5 team. I mean, at least Ohio State can say that they beat Notre Dame, even though they're a 3-loss team right now.
I do want to ask you, because I know one of the things that you wrote on .com is where we see the Big 12 and the Pac-12 end up in the first ranking will kind of determine what the committee thinks about those 2 conferences. With TCU at number 7, Oregon at number 8, what do you think that says that the committee thinks about those 2 conferences?
Well, with TCU sitting there undefeated behind a one-loss Alabama, I think they need to run the table, look good in the process, stop falling behind in the first half, dominate these teams, hope there's some other chaos, and they get in as an undefeated Big 12 champ. I mean, look, that's the reality of the situation. The pressure's on the Frogs. I think that's evident in what we've seen today. And then the Pac-12, I think, is in honestly pretty good shape when you look at Oregon sitting there, USC, UCLA. There are a lot of opportunities for those teams to continue to impress the selection committee down the stretch, but no team has ever made the college football playoff and had a more lopsided loss than Oregon did to Georgia in that season opener. So they're going to have to continue to play well to overcome that.
Heather, I just want to say thank you for having my back during that, because I thought for a minute I was living in like the Matrix or something, that they were trying to argue that Alabama wasn't going to be in the college football playoffs.
I stir things.
If they win the SEC, like I thought for a second I was the only one that had a brain up here. So I do want to know this though. If say Clemson wins out, but you have Bama that wins out and have a one-loss Georgia, do you put Georgia in front of Clemson? Because me personally, I think Clemson is not very good.
Well, it depends. Are we talking about a one-loss Georgia that's a runner-up to Alabama in the SEC championship, or a one-loss Georgia that loses to Tennessee and doesn't get in? Because there's two different stories.
No, a one-loss Georgia that loses to Bama in the SEC championship game.
Whew. So based on what we saw today from the selection committee, with Clemson being in the top 4, which I disagree with, but that, my opinion doesn't count. I think that Clemson is in a great spot because, especially if they are undefeated, then they're in, based on what we've seen today. But I don't know that they're going to stay undefeated. They've got to win at Notre Dame on Saturday. They've got to beat their rival. North Carolina is now ranked in the top 25, and they could give Clemson fits in the ACC championship game. So let's see how that one plays out. But if they beat Tennessee, and if Georgia beats Tennessee, they've got to win against the committee's #1 ranked team, and then they lose a close game to Alabama. That's pretty tough, but I think undefeated Clemson gets the nod, because remember that protocol. If you are not a conference champion, they go to that sheet of paper. There has to be no doubt in the room that that Georgia team is better than the other Power 5 conference champions.
Right. Talk about the room for one more second, Heather. Did you get a sense of what the biggest debate was that they had amongst teams?
1, 2, 3. I mean, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be going in there. I can't remember this, where not only was it not clear for 1 or 2, but there were 3 teams that they talked about for the #1 spot. Usually it's a little more clear cut than that. There's the best team in the country, Alabama, whatever it might be. No, Boo Corrigan said that they had representatives basically arguing for all 3 of those teams, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Georgia, so that they were well represented in terms of playing out all the different positions. But at the end of the day, Tennessee's 2 big wins, 2 against Alabama, and now LSU is a top 10 win for Tennessee based on the committee's ranking. Boo said that carried the day.
Heather, as always, you are the one that makes us brilliant. We appreciate your work. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks, guys.
All right, good stuff from Heather Dinich is all.
I mean, that was a pretty solid
I just want to say she proved that I was right. That's all I want to say. America, thank you. Heather.
I think the more interesting question was whether or not there'd be 3 SEC teams in the CFP if they all had 1 loss, and you had an Alabama team that won the SEC, Tennessee, and Georgia.
I mean, why are we stopping at 3? But throw LSU in there, too. Look, as somebody that doesn't have a favorite college football team.
Nobody is throwing LSU
LSU's
in there.
number 10 in the first
Which is
rankings.
confusing.
I'm just
okay,
saying,
actually,
as somebody that doesn't care, I just want chaos.
Let's go to social media really fast, because and it's going to have to deal with what you just said. Timothy.
Timothy?
His parents didn't like him.
AKA, that's not his real name, I don't think. Big Sean said, these CFP rankings are a joke. Oregon #7 and LSU 10. Did they forget Oregon lost by 46 earlier this year, or that LSU hasn't beaten anyone but overrated SEC teams? Do you guys agree?
What makes... Okay.
LSU, I'm fine with. I don't think LSU should be in the top 10 by any means, but Oregon, I think Oregon should be. I'd put money on Oregon beating Clemson.
Well, here's the thing that I hate: like overrated SEC teams. I mean, my favorite college program is UNLV. All right, I have no dog in this fight. Can I just remind everybody really quickly? We also own the ACC network. We just signed a massive rights deal with the Big 12 network. We know that Ohio State gets the best ratings and Texas gets the best ratings. If ESPN has a bias, it's to wanting to make a ton of money. And you make the most money when you get the most ratings in the college football playoffs. So what ESPN really wants is Ohio State, Texas, somebody from the West Coast, and somebody from the SEC. And if you're not smart enough to figure that, and like if you're too stupid to see that, then you're too stupid for me to counter the SEC argument. I am so tired of that.
Wow, he's really worked out. Okay, let's look at what. Yeah, that was weird.
Stupid.
Let's look at what Wes Rucker says. He said, looking at these CFP rankings, it looks like Tennessee is still very much in this thing. It loses at Georgia, but Georgia is probably out of this thing if it loses at home to Tennessee. A lot can happen in 5 weeks. Do you agree that if Georgia loses to Tennessee, but if Tennessee loses to Georgia, that Tennessee would still be in, but Georgia would be out if they lose to Tennessee at home?
I think that would depend on what happens in the SEC.
Well, Georgia would be out because Georgia wouldn't play in the SEC championship.
Right.
So the only way you can.
So you think you can kick Georgia out if they have one loss and then don't play in the SEC championship?
Yes, because they would have lost.
But that's your number
home.
one team.
Huh?
That's your number one team. Georgia's number one in the country.
No, I understand that. But if you lose at home, you can't, and you don't play in the SEC championship. You can't. There's
even
no way
though
you
you
can
think they're
make
the best team in the country.
Yeah. I'm not saying they are going to lose. I'm saying if you do.
If Georgia loses in the SEC championship game, even though they have the win over Tennessee, like it just, I don't know. You know, I think that becomes really.
If Georgia loses in the SEC championship game, you're taking them out?
Dude, what?
If they get
Did
railed,
you drink something
by
tonight?
Alabama, you think that just because you're in the SEC championship game, you think you're in a world where Ohio State.
If Georgia beats Tennessee, plays in the SEC championship, loses to Alabama, you would take
if it's
Georgia
not a close game,
out, and Tennessee would be out too?
I don't think these are unrealistic scenarios. Like,
so you would have one SEC team in the
amazingly, yeah. Like, why is that bad? Like, one SEC. I mean, if Clemson in that scenario,
we went from 3 teams to 1.
No, but in that scenario, look at the rest of the top. All right, so you know that the winner of Michigan and Ohio State in that scenario, if that team goes undefeated,
one of them's gone.
So you know that Clemson's going to get in at that point. They're going to put an undefeated Clemson in over that. So now you've got 3 of the 4 right there. There's an SEC champ, an ACC champ, and a Big Ten champ. So then it becomes a whole conversation about.
So
a
then you're going to take
Georgia
a Big 12 champion, TCU, and
depends
put
on what that
them
loss
in
looks like. Depends on what that loss looks like.
Okay, let's go to number. Did we already do Himothy? Yes, we did. Okay, let's go to number 2, Dr. B, Blake, the RX guy. I don't know why I'm trying to read these people's things. The only thing I disagree with in the initial CFP rankings is Clemson at number 4. Like, why? Everybody disagrees with that.
ACC bias, obviously. I'm sorry, I'm on my bias.
Does anybody else disagree with that? I feel like everybody agrees with that. Clemson shouldn't be at number 4.
Yeah.
Actually, we do have somebody that's going to tell us why Clemson should be at number 4. They'll be here later in the show. Don't even worry about it. I couldn't do it. No pressure, though, Drew.
All right, let's take a look at the 7 through 10 teams, because we've talked so much about 1 through 6. We haven't even. It is an oven in here, by the way. I'm schwitzing like pudding in a picnic. All right,
great.
Let's look at 7 through 10. It's just I've got sweat coming down my butt crack like I didn't know could happen.
TMI.
All right, at number 7 on the list, we have TCU. Number 8. Oh, no, we're going to go down to 25 through 21.
Wow,
No worries.
all the way down.
UCF coming in at 25.
I actually find that very interesting. Well, okay, wait. I was going to talk about Wake Forest and NC State, because the other thing that I will say about the ACC versus the Big 12 is the fact that if you look at, first of all, Texas being in the top 25 and they have 3 losses is wild.
Love it.
Why do you love that?
Love it.
Okay, but this is the reason it's wild. And I'm not talking about teams playing on the field. I'm talking about the committee ranking these teams, because these are teams that have to play other teams that are also ranked. And so in my mind, because I've done this every single season, Fitz, when it comes to the Big 12 and wondering why certain Big 12 teams are ranked in the top 25, and then seeing that they have to play opponents that are also ranked in the top 10, and that gives those teams an easier path into the CFP. So with TCU at number 7, they still have to play Texas. right? So that's a good win. The fact that Texas is there, and I'm always one that's like, oh, the only reason Texas is there so that they can get a top 25 win. But it's still interesting to think about because then TCU would have a top 25 win over Texas. They would have a win over Kansas State. They would have, it just allows those teams to have a better path into the CFP.
Well, and look at that Oregon-USC matchup because remember that the Pac-12 changed their process this year. The two best teams in the conference will face each other. There's no divisions for the conference championship game. So at this point, 8 versus 9 would be your Pac-12 championship.
Yeah.
Whoever gets that gets another significant win on the resume to the College Football Playoff Committee. So, again, am I saying that Oregon's necessarily better than some of these other teams? No, but do they have the runway left in front of them to give the committee a reason to give them a tip of the cap and a nod in? Maybe. Right. Tougher for Oregon than USC because Oregon got the snot kicked out of them by Georgia.
See, I disagree. I think Oregon's easier than USC because of who USC lost to.
So the only problem, well, I guess, because USC.
So Oregon had a better
Oregon
loss.
lost to the #1 team in the country at the time. Yeah. At the first game of the year, which is the hardest game to come out and play, mistake-free. And also, it was in Georgia, in Atlanta,
and
which is a home game.
So,
but then you also
have quarterback.
And the committee said they were going to see how a team progresses throughout the year. You can't say the Oregon Ducks team that is right now is the same team that played week 1. Not even close.
100%, yeah.
But they're specifically told they have to factor in head-to-head. So
it doesn't matter.
So that means there's virtually no scenario that wouldn't take Georgia ahead of Oregon no matter what the rest of the way.
Yeah,
that hurts the runway left. Like, if you're Oregon, you need a bunch of chaos to happen in front of you. But if you know that...
100%. You're sitting at 8.
Or
whatever.
I don't think
7.
they need that much chaos, to be honest. Let's say TCU loses to whatever Big 12 team, right? They move down. So now Oregon's at number 7. Alabama has one loss already, right? They could lose in the SEC championship. That's not too chaotic. That would take them to 6. Michigan and Ohio State cancel each other out. We think Clemson is going to take a loss for some reason. So it doesn't have to be that chaotic. I feel like it's realistic.
Right.
As long as Alabama's the team that loses. If Georgia's the team that loses, you're never going to be able to leapfrog Georgia.
Yeah.
That's true.
So,
but I didn't say all that. Fitzy, what I said was Oregon has the best chance out of them and USC to make it. USC has no chance. I don't care if they win out. They have no chance of making it in.
Man,
None.
I'd have to look at the USC schedule moving forward.
Yeah, look at that.
And right now, let's see. Strength of record has USC at 10th. They're pulling it up for us.
Okay, cool.
So they got number 10 UCLA, and then they will get they'll get, in this theory, if they win out, they would get a win over UCLA, and then they would get a win over.
Well, I'll tell you what,
That's true.
schedule is extremely hard right there. Ooh, Rice. And Fresno State.
LOL.
I mean, but where do we draw the line on that? Like, look
Florida
at the
beat Utah. Florida beat Utah.
Yeah,
Utah.
Alabama has literally played nobody. Who has Alabama played?
Alabama's schedule is way better than that.
Michigan hasn't even played a Power 5.
Listen, if Alabama played that schedule right there, Alabama's second and third team would have been playing by halftime in more than half of those games.
And
y'all lost y'all's mind if y'all think otherwise.
Alabama. Whose best wins, or what are Alabama's best wins currently right now? AJ.
Well, I mean, you can't say. I go off of how the team was ranked when they were playing them.
They weren't ranked because there was no CFP rankings.
Currently, Alabama beat Utah State. They beat Texas by 1 without Texas' starting quarterback for half that game. Mm-hmm. They beat Louisiana Monroe. Woo! They beat Vandy. They beat Arkansas, and they beat a Texas A&M team that's abysmal. They beat Mississippi State. Like, nobody.
Okay, Mississippi State was just ranked.
But
Arkansas was ranked. What was Arkansas? Was Arkansas in the top 10 when they played them?
Arkansas is not ranked now. So.
It doesn't matter.
But it does matter because
you go off of what they were ranked then.
No, you don't. The committee doesn't go off of when they were ranked then. The committee goes off of now because the more you read on a team, the more body of evidence you get. If you went off where they were ranked now, you could look at teams in week 1 and say, oh, well, they were number 3 in the country and they're not ranked. Like,
no,
it doesn't
because
work that way.
Arkansas, that game came out just completely flat. Didn't play like Arkansas. Like they had been playing.
That sounds like
every week up to that for whatever reason.
So that sounds like
A&M was tough. They still got Ole Miss.
Wait, who are you arguing for? Are you arguing for Alabama by saying Arkansas came out bad?
Yeah, he's saying that Arkansas didn't
saying
play.
Arkansas is a much better team than that.
Arkansas is a tough opponent.
Yeah.
Arkansas is an opponent. They're
Arkansas could beat I'd pick Arkansas to beat Clemson.
Oh,
well,
man.
they're not playing each other, so who cares?
I would not pick Arkansas to beat Clemson right now. Like, that's a level of like absolute chaos to it. Now, that being said, for all of the disagreement we're having here, one thing we won't disagree with, well, we might, is AJ ranking quarterbacks. We'll see how it goes.
You have to have confidence. You have to be a leader. Let's get it going, baby. All eyes are on you.
The fastest offense in the country.
You touch the ball every play. They're depending on you to take care of the team.
Hooker throws, end zone, touchdown!
Hendon Hooker, big play.
You can't get too high or too low, just staying even-keeled and playing your game and having fun.
A design run for Hooker again. He's in the end zone for an 18-yard touchdown.
Just going out there and enjoying every moment.
As we know, Hendon Hooker, a pretty solid SEC quarterback. We have a former solid SEC quarterback in the building.
Wait, me?
I mean, no. Fitz, no, it's not you.
Hold on, you never saw me play NCAA. Like, I was pretty good at the video.
SEC quarterback.
Right, like in the video game. Oh, we're talking about real life. Okay.
AJ is going to rank his top 6 quarterbacks in collegiate football. And we're going to start at number 6. Who do you have?
Number 6, I got Drake May, North Carolina quarterback. I feel like Drake is has played really well this year. I believe he's only thrown for 2 or 3 interceptions, 29 touchdowns. As a young guy, I feel like he has played really well, taking care of the football, and doesn't have the most talented team surrounding him. So I'm excited a lot about his future in North Carolina.
Did you know that he was going to be this good going into the season?
You had heard rumblings that he was going to be talented and probably the most talented guy that North Carolina's had in a while, even more than
Howell?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think the youth part of it is a really interesting part of the conversation because North Carolina seems like they lost a lot of weapons, then all of a sudden, bam, they reloaded quarterback. Now, maybe that makes it easy for them to continue to reload. That's a good pick by you.
Babyface Drake. All right, who do you have at number 5?
Number 5. A man that hit the transfer portal this past year, Bo Nix.
I know where you're going.
Bo has played, extremely well at home. I'm excited about what Oregon does the rest of this year. I think at home he's thrown for 15, 14 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. On the road, he's 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So I'm kind of worried about the type of quarterback he is on the road, but at home, he's playing top notch right now.
You know, you mentioned that. They get Utah at home, so that's a real opportunity for them. The question is, we have, at this point, Oregon State, who the committee has told us they actually like 23, right? First ever appearance in the rankings. That game is at Oregon State. I don't know. You just pick up your stadium, you move it. You tell them it's the same thing. Yeah. Same state, maybe.
That's true. I also talked to Bo Nix, and he said he's having the most fun that he's ever had since he's played collegiate football. So he's like, do you feel like he's a new quarterback than he has been in the past when he was at Auburn?
I don't know a whole lot of people that have fun at Auburn in the first place. So, but especially with all the stuff they've had going on the past 2 years. But listen, I think the weight of his dad being an Auburn legend and not having all that pressure on him has helped him grow as a quarterback, as a person, and he's playing really well, especially at home this year.
All right. Who do we have at number 4?
Number 4, and this was a tough one, but I got C.J. Stroud.
At 4?
At 4.
Okay.
All right.
And the reason I have C.J. at 4 is he hasn't played well the past couple weeks. He really struggled against Iowa. Iowa, I think he had 2 interceptions. Iowa probably dropped 6 in that game. He's made a couple more throws this year than he has in the past, where it's kind of eyebrow raising, like what was he seeing there? I know he's having to do a lot more this year, it seems like, because they don't have a running game at Ohio State, and they're really struggling establishing the run. But he has a ton of weapons. So, and listen, at number 4, it's 4th best in the country.
Well, and look, to your point, he's done a lot of it without Jackson Smith and Jigba too, right? And the sudden star power of Marvin Harrison Jr., not just for what he wears, but also for how well he plays the game. Like, it's funny. He's sort of a receiver maker. A lot of people think thought he was going to be the first pick in the draft.
Right.
You a GM, you picking him first?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you don't feel like he's living up to the expectation going into the season?
No, I've never been big on expectations, right? Like, that's what other people expect of you. And I think you are who you are. Like, I've never been caught up in, he's a first-round bust, or, he didn't pan out. Well, no, that was your expectations for him. Like, that doesn't mean that was his expectation. So, for me, I think he's playing extremely well, and he's a fun quarterback to watch. So
that's a very interesting take that we'll have to break down even more later. Okay, who do we have at number 3?
Number 3, I got Max Duggan.
Ooh!
Dougie has played really well this year. Garrett Riley and that TCU offense is fun to watch. Quentin Johnson at receiver. He's got Kendre Miller at running back. He's got weapons all over the field, but Max has done a really good job of taking care of the football, making big-time throws. Listen, they've played the past 2 weeks, have been on the road versus top 20 teams, and they were behind in both of those weeks, double digits, and Max brought them back. He's playing with a defense that doesn't show up till the second half, and he's fun to watch. I can't give Max enough credit. I think he's a special talent.
Can you educate me real quick about trust? Because I think one thing with Duggan is, and we saw it with the 4th and 1 that we've talked about a million times, but he's just comfortable throwing it up, heaving it up, and letting the guys high point the football. What's it take to get that trust?
Well, listen, that's what they're paid to do, and I can say that now in college because they are paid to do that. But it's their job. Listen, as a quarterback, you try to give your guys an opportunity to catch the ball. And when you're a receiver, the old saying, the ball touches your hands, you're supposed to catch it. So, listen, he's done a really good job of not giving the other team the ball, and he's been fun to watch.
All right, let's keep it rolling. Who do you have at number 2?
Number 2, my old school, Bryce Young at Alabama. Listen, Bryce has played really well. Really, I thought had a Heisman moment earlier in the year versus Texas. I think Bama, the beatdown they have given some of these teams has really made them look like they weren't as good as they are, as we see Arkansas on the film. But Bryce has done a really good job this year. Has played through some injuries. And I still think he's a top 3 pick coming up in next year's draft.
Bryce is my favorite quarterback.
Really?
Yes.
I think my favorite one's about to come on the list.
I mean, he's a good guy, too. Okay, so who's number 1? Since Fitz is giving it away.
Yeah, number 1, it's got to be Hendon Hooker. And for me, it's not so much, do I think he's the most talented guy? No, I don't, out of who would be out of this draft this year. But I think he's playing the best right now out of all the guys. He's comfortable in Josh Heupel's offense. They do a really good job of running the football, which, the reason I didn't have Bryce up there is because they haven't really established the run this year, and he's had a little more pressure on him. So with Jabari Small back there in the backfield, it takes some of the pressure off of Hendon, but 21 touchdowns, 1 interception, over 2,300 yards. He's got Tennessee at an all-time high right now that they haven't seen in years.
And I say he's my favorite on this list only because it's a reminder of the power of the transfer portal. Somebody that college football had given up on, hadn't had success elsewhere. He gets to the right coaching staff, the right combo. All of a sudden, we find the best version of himself. You've got 2 guys, Bo Nix also on that list, transfer portal guys that reinvented their careers. I love it.
Yep.
I'm curious. You said that Hendon Hooker isn't the most talented necessarily. Who is the most talented then?
From a talent and arm talent, playing the position, just having a feel for it, I think it's Bryce.
Okay.
Behind Bryce, it would be a toss-up between CJ and Hendon, probably. But then you got Will Levis there also that could creep in.
I can't go naming them all. You got to pick one. Let's go.
Yeah.
So Bryce. There we go. Bryce. The guy that's cool and calm and collected. I like that.
One of the most difficult things to do is deal with success. Sometimes when you win, you lose respect for winning. But really what you lose respect for is what it takes to win.
You have to perform under great pressure repeatedly, and momentum's a very powerful thing.
Inside the 5, lunging for the pylon. Touchdown, Alabama. We on the next week, though.
All right, jackets off. Pants are coming next if I don't get a fan in here. It's rankings red. Yeah, I had a jacket on. Jacket's off. Wow, thanks for.
It as a figure of speech.
You know what? No, I actually had a jacket on, but it's a little warm in here. The couch has grown. We're having a good time. We're eating some Cheez-Its. It's Ranking Reaction presented by Cheez-It, and it's time for us to get into it. The Wolfpack grows by one. ESPN play-by-play ACC Network studio host Drew Carter joins us on the couch. Drew, we had all these things we're going to talk about, but I'm just going to say one word to you, and then we'll see where things go. Clemson.
Throw that rundown out,
say
baby.
It like that? That's a weird way to
Throw it out. Yeah, say it like that again. I like
Clemson.
that. We need Reese Davis to say Clemson like that every time they're ranked in the top 4, which they will be for the rest of the season. Somebody needed to show some Clemson love on this couch. That's why they called me in. Christine, I'm really disappointed in you.
Listen, just leave me
really
alone.
disappointed.
Here's the thing that I will say. I talk about Clemson a lot.
Okay.
Now it seems like I'm not necessarily a homer.
Did you forget where you went to grad school? And by the way, this is a Randy Moss Christmas sweater in case anyone
that is
didn't
well done by you.
because it's Christmas season.
Yeah, it is
right?
Christmas season. The Christmas music's already blaring on, and I'm jealous I didn't wear my Christmas sweater today.
I'm glad you didn't.
Good. Well, all I want for Christmas is Clemson making the playoff because they deserve it. This is one of the 4 best teams in the country. And I was sitting over there. I wish y'all had a camera on me when AJ was saying some blasphemous stuff about Clemson, how Arkansas would beat Clemson.
That was blasphemy, yeah.
I was over there, and I was fuming because, dude, put some respect on Clemson's name, please. Like, this is a team with the pedigree and the resume to have some respect in the top 4. Like, they belong there. I don't understand why you hate Clemson so much because they had one bad season where they still won 10 games last year.
I didn't say anything. Hold on. Did I say anything about the program?
No, you just don't think they're good this year?
Don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say anything about the program. All I said was this year they're terrible. They're not very good.
I mean, terrible,
How can you say
though?
they're terrible?
They have terrible for their standard.
AJ, they have 4 more ranked wins than Alabama.
I like that you said terrible for their standard, though, because Clemson's standard is significantly higher than the majority.
Terrible for their standard.
But Drew just had a mic drop. What'd you just say?
They have 4 more ranked wins than AJ McCarron's Crimson Tide.
Okay, and guess what? We play the number 10 team in the country this week. That'll be a win. We play Ole Miss, who's what, 11th?
But AJ, we're not talking about what they're going to do. We're talking about what's on their resume.
It doesn't matter.
Well, the committee's told to only factor what's come to today, right?
Yeah.
Like every week they have to restart. So it does matter to them what the resume's been.
No, he's talking about no, incorrect. Because he's talking about the future.
No, He's saying that today.
If you just listen to what he said, Fitz, he said he said that Clemson is going to be a number 4 team, a top 4 team in the country for the remainder of the year. It's exactly what he just said. If y'all want to run the film back, run it back.
I mean, but the 3 of us heard him say they have 4 top 20, 25 wins over teams.
I'm not worried about that.
But that today is part of the resume.
I understand that. I'm just saying that I don't think they're one of the they're in the top 4 teams in the country.
Why?
That's fine.
Because
I
of the
just
eye
disagree.
Test. Because of
the
eye test.
Listen,
so you're taking the eye test and you're saying that the schedule does not matter. So Alabama hasn't played any.
Syracuse had them beat. Syracuse, if Syracuse didn't blow an absolute just awful lead.
Yeah, but Texas had Alabama beat. But it doesn't really matter. Why?
No, they didn't.
I mean, come on.
Texas was never up on Alabama like Syracuse was up. But Syracuse was up by 20 points.
Okay,
No, hold on. AJ, if Quinn Ewers never gets hurt, does Alabama still win that game?
Yes, I still
lies.
I think they still do.
At some point, though, we can't pick and choose when winning a close game is something we give a team
credit for. If my aunt had Will, she'd be a bicycle. hypothetical.
Okay, wait.
What
Let
does it matter?
me just also.
We can't go off ifs.
Slightly.
Well, I mean, come on. This whole thing is based on ifs. You just told me that what's going to happen every week for the rest of the season, which is inherently nil. If. I mean, there's no two ways.
Guarantees. But I'm talking about Syracuse had them beat. Should have won that game. Absolutely atrocious in the second half.
Talking about shoulda. Talking about shoulda. Did it?
And then they absolutely get blown
So if Alabama,
Notre Dame,
wait, can I ask you?
One of the worst teams.
Can I ask you a hypothetical question? If Alabama had lost to Texas, if Alabama had lost to Texas, do they deserve to be ranked where they're currently ranked?
No.
Okay. Clemson has not done what Alabama has done.
Clemson hasn't lost a game.
They haven't lost a game.
No, it doesn't. I don't care about that. I'm just
wins
saying,
and losses don't matter now.
I'm
okay.
saying this is, for me, they are not a top 4 team in the country. They're not.
For you.
But the problem with transitive property, when we go into like, hey, Clemson should have lost to Syracuse and then Syracuse got killed by Notre Dame. The problem is in a college, and you know this better than anybody, college football this year particularly is so wildly up and down that we can see one team absolutely show up one week and not show up the next.
Right.
It's happened all across the landscape. So it's tough to look at one team and say, well, you got blown out by them, and then this game was close, and that means that you stink. Like that's a hard nugget to go through, because then you start looking at, well, who did Texas? Well, Texas won by 1, but then they didn't play well against this.
And they didn't have a quarterback, but then Alabama beat them, and they would have beat them with the quarterback, hypothetically.
I'm just going off of them. This whole thing's based off opinion. So y'all are more than welcome to have your opinion. But for me, somebody that's played the game and can watch the game and tell how good they are, they don't throw the ball very well. Will Shipley's really the main weapon they have on offense. DJ turns the ball over way too much, and they're not very good. They came back. Syracuse blew a 20-point lead. Syracuse had that game. If they didn't play just absolutely atrocious in the second half, they win that ball game.
Okay.
And then I don't think Syracuse was very good because Garrett Schrader looks like he's hurt throwing the ball. And they finally figured it out in the second half for whatever reason. But
as somebody that didn't play the game, Alabama went into the Tennessee game, as you well know from the show we did together, last in the nation in drop passes. They went into that game last in the SEC in drop passes. They went into that game last in penalty yardage for the entire season. If we just, as somebody that didn't play the game, if you look at the simple metrics, this Alabama team has not been great. They've been handsy on the defensive backfield. You know that. We've talked about it. Like, you can go across the board and find the faults, but then you turn around and say, you know what, through those faults, they've still won a bunch of games.
If Bama didn't have 17 penalties for 138 yards, they win that.
But that's their own fault. So if Bama doesn't step on their own, you know what? They win the game. But that's part of this metric.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, it doesn't matter. They lost the game.
And Clemson hasn't lost, so why doesn't it matter for them? But it does matter for Alabama.
All I'm saying is Clemson is not a top 4 team in the country.
But that's your opinion, AJ?
Right. This whole show is based off opinion.
I'm just trying to find out why you have that opinion.
It's opinion that we all base with the amount of stuff that we want. We got to move on. They're getting in my ears saying we got to mean. Drew, we got to say bye to Drew for right now. We'll continue this argument, though. I promise you that. In the meantime, we got a drinking game. Who doesn't need a drinking game, right? This was out on Twitter. Sorry. Oh, there we go. The official drinking game of the first unveiling of the CFP rankings of the season.
Bottoms up.
When CSC is ranked for, oh man, this is actually pretty good. Take a sip when head-to-head wins are not used. Terms like eye test or resume are used. We can't do this. We can't do this at all. Like, my liver can't handle it.
Eye test.
I live on a tour bus.
That's all AJ's been saying all day.
Do I?
All right, on Saturdays, we are awarding one lucky fan on site at Countdown to College Game Day with the illustrious Cheeziest Chain. Let's take a look back at when Christine and the Harrys were down at Jackson State this past weekend.
You've been here since 4 a.m., correct?
I have.
How does it feel to be the cheesiest fan?
Oh, man, it's amazing. And it's amazing just to have College Game Day here hosting Jackson State and Southern and to be surrounded by all of you.
Hey, I know that's right.
Look, I'm going to be honest. We're not going to let them have all the fun. That That chain is fire.
Okay, so that was Terica. She was iced out, which is why we decided to give her the cheesiest chain for that week because, of course, the cheesiest chain is also iced out.
Well, here on Rankings Reaction, we're also going to be competing for the right to wear the chain. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some picks, and we get this competition going to find out who is the cheesiest. We'll track the picks. We'll have tiebreakers. We're going to pick 5 different games, all right? So 6 different Week 10 games. Everybody ready?
Yeah.
The first game, Clemson versus Notre Dame.
I mean,
ladies
Clemson.
first. You got Clemson? Yeah,
Yes.
Clemson. I got Clemson.
I feel like that's
AJ?
very obvious.
All right, so Clemson, Notre Dame. We're all taking Clemson.
Yeah.
Oh, man, this is scary. We all agree so far. What about Wake Forest, NC State? All right, Wake Forest at NC State.
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest?
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest. There's no drama here. Come on, guys. All right, we'll get to the next game. Oklahoma State taking on Kansas.
I mean, Kansas did have a nice run there at the beginning of the season.
Oklahoma State.
But we're going to go Oklahoma State.
Man, I want Lance Leipold to win that game, but no, we're all in agreement on that. So far, 3 for 3. This is not going to help any of us get the cheesiest chain. What about Texas, Kansas State?
Okay, I'm going Kansas State.
Okay. Oh, putting the horns up. Why are you going
Horns down.
You're a believer in Texas with Quinn Ewers back, right?
I am. I still think Texas is a top 25 team in the country.
Yeah, because they almost beat Alabama.
No, I think if you look at anybody they've played when Quinn's been healthy, they've played everybody well. So
every time I think I'm counting Kansas State out, I'm wrong. So I'm going to agree with Christine on this. So now we have it might be AJ wearing this chain next week. Speaking of Alabama taking on LSU. It's a
what the heck?
Don't worry. Alabama taking on LSU. Who you got?
Alabama.
Bama.
Yeah, play me some music. Yeah, Alabama's going to go in with this one also. So I think we all agree on that. But let's get to the biggest game in all the land. Tennessee taking on Georgia. You're taking Tennessee?
Yes.
Who you got?
Bulldogs.
Oh.
At home.
We have another disagreement. Here's the problem. I'm also going Georgia. So you and I agreed on every game.
Me and Fitz have the same thing.
But there's a tiebreaker. Trust me. There's a tiebreaker on this.
Well, she picked Tennessee.
I'm picking.
He also
picked Tennessee too.
He just said Georgia.
Did I say Georgia? I didn't mean that. I picked Tennessee to win this football game.
He picks Georgia.
No, I picked Tennessee.
Okay,
all right.
fine.
So now the tiebreaker is the total points scored in the game. I got
a lot of points.
I'm going 77. And you know what? I sat there for like 5 minutes to try to figure this out, and then I realized math is hard, so I just picked 77.
Yeah, math is hard. I picked 101.
100. Well, I mean 52.
Well, I mean,
exactly. That's what I was thinking.
I picked 78, but it doesn't matter because I got 2 games that are different than y'all. So
so you wouldn't necessarily have a tiebreaker.
Yeah, he doesn't even need the tiebreaker. Let's take a look again here at what these picks look like. And remember, we'll keep track of this every week. One of us will get to wear the fancy bling bling known as the cheesiest chain in all the land next week, depending on how it goes.
Okay, we've had a lot of heated debates on this couch.
Fitz had to take off his jacket.
Yeah, no.
That's how
it's
hot
off, it's on, it's off, it's on. I don't know what we're doing.
So for that reason, we're going to end the show with our way more important rankings than anything that we've already ranked so far. And this week, I feel like can be a little controversial. Fitz, it's your time to pick.
I don't know why they picked me, and Drew, welcome back to this, because this is the chaos. Every year this becomes heated, and so I was asked to rank my favorite, my fall favorites. So Fitz's fall favorites. Look at the alliteration we're doing here. You know, Halloween's over, now we're into fall, and all of a sudden that gives me the chance for my top 6 fall favorites. In at number 6. Pumpkin-flavored non-pie desserts, because pie is trash, but pumpkin is delicious.
Weird.
So I don't want pie at all.
All pie is trash?
All pie is
He doesn't
trash.
like pie in
all
general.
pie is trash. Pumpkin pie, apple, all pie. And don't even, like, I toured for years. Everybody's like, you got to try my grandma's favorite pie. No, your grandma's pie is trash, too. All pie is trash. But pumpkin non-pie desserts are delicious.
I'm with you on that.
Pumpkin non-pie desserts.
Like pumpkin cheesecake, pumpkin ice cream.
He likes cheesecake, but he doesn't like pie.
Yeah, it's the same damn thing.
Cheesecake has a graham cracker crust.
Graham
Graham cracker crust, I'm all in on. It's not a pie, it's a tort. Number 5, apple cider anything. And anything that involves apple cider, I'm going to drink, I'm going to eat, I'm going to cook with it. I want anything involving apple cider.
Apple cider pie?
Apple cider crisp.
So
maybe we'll go that way, but still no pie. And number 4, hoodie and shorts. Look, my favorite, you get up in the morning, it's going to be a little too chilly. In the afternoon, it's going to be too hot. So you just put on the Raiders short, the Raiders hoodie, and you're good to go for the rest of the day. That's my type of fashion. Number 3, fall scenery. The leaves in Connecticut
is beautiful.
Are gorgeous.
Yes, it is beautiful.
I drive around all day, and this is great. And number 2 on my list, football weekends, right? Like, we take this for granted. We spend all day Saturday watching college football. I spend all day Sunday crying after the Raiders lose. And
how can this not be number one?
No, number one.
That's right.
That's right. Always remember one thing. What do you do at halftime of a game? At halftime of a game, you sit down with your friends, you eat some food, you drink a couple of drinks, and you shoot the you-know-what. What do you do on Thanksgiving? You eat some food, you talk to your friends and family, you shoot the you-know-what. Thanksgiving is the halftime of Christmas season. The music was out today. It was blaring. Mariah Carey got me through November 1st. All the Christmas music.
Oh, my goodness. I feel like it's a little too early. I'm a person that doesn't like pulling out the Christmas too soon before Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Why?
It doesn't get old, though.
See?
It does. It really does, though.
And you need to expand
the same
your
damn
playlist.
songs, like the same. And I love the Christmas Story, but like the same
movies over
like,
and over again.
Just wait till it's 3 weeks before Christmas and then have your fun.
Right.
Before Thanksgiving is a
whole 2 months of Christmas is a lot of Christmas.
It takes too many hours to put up the trees and the lights and all that stuff to let it go like for just a few weeks. I want that stuff. I want months.
They make
months
trees that come with lights already. Pull it out of the box, plug it in.
Yeah, maybe when you got that NFL money. Come on now. All right, it takes a huge crew to make this show happen. We appreciate every single one of them. Drew Carter joining in on the fun. Thank you for having us. Steve Williamson. I'm Jason Fitz. Thank you for watching Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. Get you some. Oh. It's tasty.